Welcome to the Fi Guys podcast. Today is Fi Friday feedback. I am so excited to join and talk to you guys today. We're going to be recapping Monday's episode, which was led by Dominic, where we talked all about house hacking, subject to investing, and most importantly, creative financing. So we're going to be recapping all those key takeaways on how to get you into a house today, because right now, the market's crazy. Prices are high, interest rates are high. So we're going to be discussing some creative ways to get into a house. Then we're going to go on to our viewer mailbag. We do have a juicy one today. As always, has to do with someone in a lot of debt who's looking for some help. And then we're going to finish out with win of the week. So please be sure to stick around for that, because both Dominic and I have some pretty fun ones we're going to talk about, which might actually be able to save you some money as well if you listen to our wins of the week. So with that, Dominic, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and talk about what we talked about on Monday's pod, which was a reversal from what we normally do. Normally, I am the sensei, you are the student. But on last Monday's podcast, we actually reversed that script, and I got to sit at the master of you, or sit at the feet of the master in you, and
Sure.
You got to teach me a little bit, some different ways of how to get into a house. So let's talk about that. I think the first thing we talked about, though, was house hacking.
We did. It was a great podcast. I enjoyed it. I love real estate. You love real estate. The people love real estate. So yeah, we talked a little bit about house hacking. We talked about subject to investing, and we talked about creative financing. We're going to be doing a brief summary on that. If you want the full 50-minute pod of all the juiciest details you can get, that's what Monday's for. Today, like Chris said, overview, Fi Friday feedback, win of the week. That's what we're doing here today. So with that being said, let's hop right into it. House hacking. Let's see if you learned, the viewer. Do you know what house hacking is from Monday's pod? Time's up. Yeah, time's up. Time's up. Chris, what do we got? What is house hacking?
The way I would define house hacking is purchasing a larger property than you need with the intent of renting out either additional rooms or additional units in order to, if not completely take away your mortgage, at least greatly subsidize it so that it's less than what you'd normally be paying. So maybe getting a house that has 4 rooms, or getting a duplex where obviously you don't need all those extra rooms or that additional side of that house. So you rent it out and you're able to pay less money towards your mortgage because you're not paying for the entire property. You're getting that rent in and then using that to pay off the mortgage.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. That is spot on, my friend. Spot on. Yeah. So I'm going to go through my notes. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And yeah, that's the definition. As simple as it can be, that is the definition. So yeah, living for rent-free or at a reduced cost, it can be a way to build equity depending on if you own the home or not. I know, like we said on Monday, you said in college you used to house hack a little bit. You didn't own the property, but you sublet, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So I rented it and then I sublet to other people, and then I was the point of contact for the landlord. The landlord, they didn't really care who was inside the house as long as I paid him. But yeah,
maintained it.
But most people I think are going to try to purchase the house and try to build equity in the house, because what you really want to do is purchase the property, live in the property, rent it out, help cover the expenses. And you should be trying to build equity. If not, then if you're renting, I would hope that you're trying to live for like barely nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can do it with single family homes, house hacking. You can also do it with a 2-plex, 3-plex, or even a 4-plex, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What would happen if you tried getting that like FHA loan with a 5-plex? Would that happen, or would they just be like, no, you're above the limit, you can't qualify?
No, it has to be a 4-plex and below. So basically, what a 4-plex is there's 4 separate units under one building, one home, not necessarily a home. We'll call it a building, right? If you've seen a 4-plex, it's usually like the ones in my area is like, you've got a front door on the east side, a front door on the west side, a front door on the south side, on all 4 sides, right? So that's how they would do it. It's all under one roof, separate air conditioning, separate water, separate power, separate everything, but it's all under one roof, basically.
Could a 4-plex also be if you had like a larger property and there's 4 distinct units on that property, they're not sharing a roof? Would that still qualify?
I think it depends on how the city classifies it, because if they have their own address, which they would, and I would think that was 4 separate. I would think that would be 4 separate buildings. I would think.
Okay.
But you may want to look more into that. That's a great question. I never thought about that. But yeah, I think they would treat that as 4 separate units, and you'd need a loan for each one of those. But I know sometimes you can get loans to buy portfolios that have multiple homes in multiple different locations and have one lump sum portfolio loan for that, to purchase that. So that's kind of something similar. But We won't get too much into that today. Yeah. So, but yeah, like Chris was saying, the FHA, 4 units and below, quad, 3-plex, 2-plex, single family home, right? Those ones are great. Low down payment. What was the percentage on the down payment for that one, Chris?
3 to 4% typically.
3 to 4. Yeah, typically. If you're a veteran, you can get a VA loan, or you can just get a conventional loan if you're just a normie like me. Unfortunately, I'm a normie. Question: since your father was in the military, Chris, can you get a VA loan? No.
You.
Just curious. Yeah, because I know like through like desert. What's that veterans bank that you
Bank
use?
of America or no. Navy Federal?
Navy Federal. Yeah, I wasn't sure if they have better terms than, say, corporate greed of Bank of.
Typically, you can get better terms if you want, like for a loan, if you go to a credit union rather than going to a bank. And you can go to your own local credit union. You don't have to go to Navy Federal Credit Union. Obviously, if you're not military, you can't do that. But yeah, you can always go to your local credit union because they are not public companies.
Bingo. So yeah, house hacking, right? So you have a real life story of house hacking that we talked about, the subletting, you're the point of contact for your landlord, but people can actually house hack in the house they are. Say, I'll give you me as an example, right? So I have 2 rooms in this house, one for sleeping, one for recording this podcast, basically. I could move this desk and put it in my room if I wanted, or put it somewhere else in the house, and I could let a buddy of mine come crash here, charge them $500 a month. Bam, house hacking. It's as simple as that, right? $500 a month. Would it cover the mortgage? No, but it would help. Would it go towards groceries? Yeah, it could go towards whatever I need it to go towards, right? And house hacking is the easiest way to get started in real estate, I would say. It's the easiest way. You would agree with that one, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's hard I look at it 3 different ways. There's the renter, there's the owner, and then there's the landlord. And making the jump from renter to owner is the biggest jump. If you're an owner, being from an owner to a landlord, not that big of a jump. But what most people try doing, unfortunately, is they try going from renter to landlord, which is just a huge chasm to jump. At least in this one, you're an owner, and now you're a landlord too. And the person's living with you in the unit. So you're not going to be, bringing in like some guy off the streets who's like addicted to crack or anything, because they're going to be in your house with you. And again, if you're going to be doing the house hacking, I would never tell the person that I'm the owner of the property. You tell the person that I am the, property manager, and my uncle who's back east somewhere, he's the owner. That way, when something goes wrong, you'd be like, oh, my darn uncle, he's such a POS. Let me call him and get this stuff fixed. And then you call everyone else because you want to live next to your tenants. You do not want your tenants to live next to their landlord.
Absolutely. Yeah, I learned that technique from a book I read on negotiation. It's like the person who comes in, usually, and this is like a little hack for you guys now, the person who comes in and says that, hey, I don't have the power to do it. I don't have the control. Sorry. Like, that's usually the one in power. If they're really good to negotiate, that's the one who has the power. And the person who comes in and says, I have all the power, I'm running this deal.
Yeah, that's just their ego. And the reason their ego is triggered is because they have zero power. But yeah, that's if you want to read about that, Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. That's one of the books. The other one would be Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, where they both talk about those things. If you're talking about negotiation, Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference would be the one to go with.
Amazing books. Two of my favorites, honestly. 48 Laws of Power. That's a dark book. You feel like a sophisticated, like knight. Like, you feel dark reading that book, but very interesting. Very good book. So getting on to segment 2, what else did we talk about? We talked about subject to. You might be thinking, what are these made up? What are you talking? What is a subject to? What are we talking to? Subject to, right? So I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to that. So let's get right into it. So you're basically taking over the existing mortgage of a property while keeping the original owner's name in place, right? So how it works is you control the property and make the mortgage payment, but the mortgage place stays in the seller's name, right? Why would I do such a darn thing? Why, Chris? Why would I do something crazy like that?
I would think because right now interest rates are around 7%, 6% or 7%, where some homeowners might have mortgages at 3%, 4%. And if you could save yourself 3% on interest rates, that could really save you a lot, especially if you have a 30-year loan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we did the math last time, and the difference between, a mortgage for 200,000, if you can find a mortgage for 200,000, which is probably going to be a lot more these days. 200,000 at 4% over 30 years is a lot different than 200,000 7%. Well, it's only a few percentage points. I mean, that's what it is, and it's nothing crazy. But like, if a plane is flying and it's 1 degree off and it flies for 3 hours, you're going to be in a different state. It's a big deal. The small numbers matter. And those are the things that we're trying to get around, right? Paying that 7%. We don't want to make the banks any richer. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to make the banks any richer. I'm not a big fan of them. Not the biggest fan. Appreciate them.
Yeah. So
but I'm good.
yeah, the way I would try to explain subject to somebody is whenever you purchase a house, you're making an agreement between you and the bank, and that's your mortgage. It's between you, the buyer, and then the bank who is lending you the money. Now, when you purchase that house, you're getting the deed that's going to your name, but the bank still owns the mortgage. So if you default, then the bank gets to take that deed and say that it's ours. So whenever you're doing subject to, and just, subject to, it's subject TO. It's not subject and the number two. It's nothing special like that. So subject to investing. So what you're doing is the owner of the house that you want to purchase, they're still owning the mortgage. So from the bank standpoint, the person that still owns the house is their original person that they loaned the money to. And now you just take possession of the property, so you're not living it. And more importantly, you take possession of the deed. So now on the county registry, if there was someone who's to pull who owns this house, your name would be on there, not the original seller. But from the bank standpoint, they don't know what's going on over here. They don't know what's going on with who's living in the house. They don't know what's going on with what's on the county registry. Obviously, it's public information, so they could pull it, but they're not going to be doing that with every single loan that they have because that'd be crazy. So now you're having to pay for this person who's staying on the mortgage with the bank. You're paying their payments for them. Of course, it's not as simple as that. So this is definitely where you want to get an attorney involved to make sure that the contracts are done correctly, because things could really fall through the cracks. And the biggest concern would be that the bank finds out and now they say, hey, like, you're not allowed to do that. You need to pay us the full amount, which is obvious you can't do that, or you wouldn't be going down into a subject to investing strategy.
Spot on. It's nice when someone listens. Chris came into the podcast on Monday. No idea, never heard of subject to, and just like that, he knows all the basics. He knows the bread and butter, right? And I think that's a great test to what you guys can do as well, right? Just with one pod, you can soak it up, bing, bang, boom. And you might be asking, why would anybody do subject to, right? Why, if I'm selling my house, why would I ever want to do that? Well, there's certain scenarios. Not every scenario is black and white. Not every scenario is, well, I've been paying my house for 30 years and it's paid off and all is well, right? Like, no, like, life is tumultuous. Life is crazy, right? It's not simple. It's messy. So how can we benefit from that? And how can we help people from that, right? It's not always about, oftentimes when people think about real estate investing, they think of it as like, wow, how am I screwing over the next guy, right? This is not what we're doing here, right? I can't sleep at night if I'm screwing someone over. That's going to eat at me because I know I'm a good person at heart, right? So we're making this deal. It's benefiting us, but it's benefiting the seller as well, right? So the example I gave last podcast was, say, $200,000 home. He's been paying it off for a few years, has about $10,000 worth of equity in it. Not a lot of equity. $10,000, not a lot of equity, right? He goes to sell it. You got real estate commissions that comes out of the seller's pocket, taxes and fees,
Closing costs,
inspections. We've got what's the last one? Oh, I know it. Don't stop me. Taxes on the profits made from the sale. If you made any profit at the end of it, he's losing lots of money. He's losing lots of money. And the real estate commission, realtor's commission is 3%, 4%, right? So even at 3%, $6,000 of his $10,000 of equity eaten up. So he's got $4,000 left. Taxes and fees are going to destroy that. So he's going to be coming out of pocket to relinquish an asset that he had, quote unquote asset, right? Subject to comes in, the subject to guy comes in and say, hey, I may or may not, I can't get a loan, right? I saw this once. I saw this one time. I'm an entrepreneur. I make a lot of money. My income fluctuates, right? There might be a month where I make $1,000. There might be a month where I make $10,000. Fluctuates, right? Bank looks at that and say, your past job history is all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason, I'm not going to give you a loan. Your credit score is good. Your debt to income would be good, but I don't know if you can pay this, right? And you might be like, well, no, I always have enough money to support myself. I know on average, this is what I make, right? But the bank says no, right? This is where a subject to could come into play, where you have a seller that would lose money if they sold their house and a buyer who can't get a loan, right? So this is where the two people meet. You talk with your lawyer, you talk with an attorney, right? You talk with the realtor and ask them, hey, would your client be open to subject to? What's their situation, right? So yeah, they would be open to that. They're going to lose money on the sale. They're going to lose money on the sale, right? Let your ego get in the way of it, right? So say, well, I'm going to put X amount of dollars down. That can go right to the realtor, or I'm sorry, right to the seller. So they're going to make money off of it. They're going to make money off the deal. And rather than having them pay a bunch of taxes and fees for selling their house because of capital gains, that was the key word I was looking for earlier, we are just going to be taking over their mortgage. Okay. So the seller is going to leave with more money in their pocket. I'm going to get a house. Everybody's happy. Even the realtor is going to get paid. Everybody is happy. Who's not happy? Who's not making money? Who's the greediest one in here? Bank. The bank, right? The bank wants you to get a 7% loan because like we talked about, the rule of 72, 7%, that's going to multiply quite rapidly, almost every 10 years. That's going to double every 10 years. It's scary. But if we can get his loan, right, we are just taking over payments on his loan. His loans might be a lot lower, 4%, 5%, even 6%, 6 and 7%. That's still a big difference, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's a big difference. I don't know if I would take on this level of risk for 1 percentage point, but
yeah,
different strokes for different folks. Everyone's going to be different depending on what your situation is.
Absolutely. So yeah, I hope that kind of illustrated when the situation would be perfect, right? I wouldn't use this on every situation, right? If you're making $80,000 a year, you got a wife, good credit, 720, 750 credit score and above, you got debt to income's great. Just get a loan, get a regular loan. Just get a conventional or get an FHA, I'm not saying that like every house you should buy should be subject to, like, no. Like Chris said, different strokes for different folks. I like that. So yeah, that's kind of the idea behind subject to. I hope that was elegantly illustrated, Chris. Any final thoughts on that?
So. No, I mean, I think it totally makes sense. Just think of you're showing up and you're saying, hey, I'm going to give you some money. I'm going to give you whatever amount of money is going to get me inside this door, and I will cover the mortgage for the rest of the remainder. And you go away, you go do your thing. You have money, and I'm just going to take over it. We're not going to talk to the banks about this. It's just going to be between you and I.
Yep.
And we're all cool to go. And the best way to do this is when you're looking for a house, you see a property that's available, and you're like, hey, that looks pretty interesting. Call up that realtor and ask the realtor, hey, do you know whether the owner is selling this property? And maybe they're going to be like, oh yeah, they don't really need to sell the property. Like they just kind of want out. That's probably not going to be a good one to do subject to with. But if the person's like, yeah, I guess their parents are not doing too well, back home. Yeah. So they really have to sell the property and they want to get out here in like the next month or so. And they're kind of upside down on the loan and everything. Well, now we have a distressed seller and an eager buyer. Now that this might be the place where a subject to could really come in play because both parties are winning. But if not both parties are winning, it's going to be really hard to convince. So this is just a tool to have in your Batman utility belt to know like, hey, this is the right situation for this tool. Let's pull that out. If I'm fighting against, I don't know, Killer Croc, I'm not going to be pulling out my freaking my little key pick. Like you have different tools for different things.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask the realtor, hey, how much do you know how much they have left on their loan? Like, is it paid off? Like, because obviously, guys, if the loan is 90% paid off, they're not going to want to sub to with you. It makes no sense. Why would they? That's kind of where the creative financing would go into it, or getting a conventional loan, right? So it's a very specific number of terms you're looking for when going out and doing a subject to deal. But we're going to move on to segment 3. And if you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comment section, or if you want, you can email us. We're always open for that. But yeah, so segment 3. So we did house hacking. Remember that? We did subject to. This is creative financing. This is very similar to subject to. It's very similar, but there's a very specific difference. So I'm going to read it out and I'll see if you guys can figure it out. So basically, for creative financing, this is a non-traditional financing method to acquire properties. This provides flexibility and reduced need for cash reserves. The seller acts as the lender with flexible terms. For example, the seller will finance 80% of the property and the buyer brings 20% as a down payment, right? Think of it as a lease to own type of situation. So basically is trying to put this in the best, I think of the best way to put this. Chris, maybe you can probably summarize this one a little bit better. But rather than paying the bank, right? Rather than paying the bank, you're paying the seller. So the seller is your bank. You can negotiate better terms with them, more favorable terms. You can negotiate maybe interest rate, maybe even no interest rate. Maybe you could negotiate balloon terms, or when you need it paid off by, or how much you want to pay each month for this, right? Because if you're doing a balloon at the end of 6 years, you could have a different monthly payment, right? Do you want to jump in on this one, Chris?
Yeah, I'll try to spitball something that I'm working on. Do you guys remember back in the 90s, remember Blockbuster Video and how great Blockbuster Video was? That was a thing. But
I love that.
Think about this. Rather than purchasing a house, let's just think we're going to rent a movie. So we go to Blockbuster Video, we want this movie, and maybe we want to buy this movie, but the movie costs, I don't know, $25. So what's Blockbuster going to do? They're going to say, hey, give us $5 right now. You go and you take that movie home, and then you can rent it from us for $2 a month. Every 2 months, I'm sending Blockbuster movies $2. After 5 or 6 months, Blockbuster is going to be like, all right, I'm tired of you guys sending me $2. Just give me the remaining $10 or whatever that's remaining, and you can keep the movie. The exact same thing with the house. You're going in there, the owner, the current seller, he owns the house. You're now going to give him a down payment, and that's going to allow you to take the movie, which is take possession of the house. From there, now you're just paying. Hey, here's money, here's money, here's money. You're paying them, and then they're paying the mortgage. And obviously, you're going to be paying more money, typically, than what the mortgage is, because they're taking on a level of risk and they want to pocket some money. But say the person has a loan out for 20, 30 years. They don't want to be in this agreement with you for 20 or 30 years. So that's what the balloon payment is. They're going to say, hey, we're going to let you do it for 5, 6, typically 6, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever the agreement is. But after that, I want my full amount. I don't want to be in this deal with you forever. You're just paying me and I'm paying the mortgage. So hopefully within those 7, 6, 10 years, we have figured out a way to come up with the remaining amount of money to pay off that owner, get them out free and clear. They were able to make money at the beginning for you to take possession of the movie, take possession of the house. They made money the entire way because you're paying them both their mortgage and you're paying them a little bit of rent, extra money they got to keep. And then they know at the end of 7, 6, 10 years, they're going to get that full payment. And if they don't get that full payment, you're out of the house. They take it back. They take full possession. Is that a good way of doing it? No, that was just off. That was
beautiful. Beautiful. Perfect. I hope that we clip that and that goes on every short on every platform. That was perfect. That was freaking A1 sauce. I can't add any more to that. That was perfect. Yeah, guys. So rewatch that part, genuinely. That Blockbuster example, it's perfect. It's exactly right. Yeah, honestly, I feel like creative financing and subject to, it's going to be the wave of the future. I'm not saying conventional loans are going to die, right? I'm not going to say that, obviously. But they're only going to get more popular, the financing and the subject to. Because
until at least that if interest rates drop down again back
Mhm.
to lower rates, then there'd be no reason for this. But if
Correct.
interest rates remain high, which who knows what the future holds, then this is a good way to do it. And don't think that you can only use one of these. Obviously, you can only use subject to or creative financing. We're not going to be doing both of them,
Mhm.
but you could use subject to or creative financing to get yourself into a house hack.
Yep.
That could be something we could do.
Yeah.
But remember, when we do the creative financing or the subject to, the thing that we need to be able to do is first off be able to guarantee that we're able to make those payments every single month to the owner or to the seller of the house. But also, we need to have a large amount of money set aside in order to do the down payment, which is again paying that money to rent the DVD from Blockbuster. If you just
Yep.
walk in there and say, "I have no money, but I want to rent your house. Would you please leave and let me just rent your house? I'm going to pay you what your mortgage is." They're going to tell you to F off. Like there has to be demand from both sides. That's how you find a good deal. Is
Yep.
there is a seller that wants to sell and a buyer that wants to buy. Just because you're a buyer that wants to buy, you can't just go up to a seller who doesn't want to sell and try to make a deal. You can do your best, but you're going to be banging your head against the wall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It reminded me, my dad, he does real estate, right? And I was asking him about different houses and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, I knew this guy, but this is for one of the rental properties. And he couldn't make his payments anymore. And he's like, do you want to buy it? I'm like, and it's my dad's speaking. He's like, yeah, I'll buy it off you. He's like, how about I give you $7,000 and I'll just take over your payments? He goes, oh, that's great. Because he was underwater. The guy took his $7,000, got the heck out of the house. Dad got the house, put a tenant in it. He got the house for free, basically.
Yep.
Minus the $7,000, right? But that obviously comes back from the rent. You make the difference, not in 1 month, obviously, that'd be insane. But over time, and then the house gets paid off, and you're just infinite money back.
Yeah. Which is something to think about from the listener standpoint. Is like this all sounds well and good, but it takes a few things. First off, it takes luck. But I believe that in life there is no luck. It's the right information in the right situation that you created. And the only way to create these situations is to ask the questions. Hey, would they be open to these things? But you can't ask the questions, are you open to these things, if you've never heard of subject to, if you've never heard of creative financing. If you're sitting there thinking the only way to get into a house is I have to go get a traditional or an FHA loan, then you're never going to ask the question, would they be open to this? So that's how you create your own luck, by being out there and open. And yeah, for most of the people listening to this, they may never come across a situation where they could do a creative financing or a subject to. But there might be somebody out there who's listening to this and they're going to be able to like, oh, wait, I heard about this thing. Let me ask if this is available. And that person will be like, yes, I'm totally down for that. Because just like your dad in that story, he had the right person at the right time and they were in the right distress situation. And your dad was there to help. He wasn't the bad guy. He helped somebody get out of a bad situation.
And what did it do? What was the result, right? He helped that guy get out of a bad situation, but what did it do for the family? This house has been in the family ever since. It's been rented ever since. Obviously, we've had to get, serviced on it. We've had to get new refrigerators. We've had to get, new air conditioning, right? We've had to fix the roof. We've had to do maintenance on it, of course, as any house. But this house isn't going anywhere. It's not going to get destroyed by a tornado. It's going to stay in the family for forever. And as we stand, the house is paid off. So every month, it's just another check, $1,200, $1,100, whatever it might be, right? Maybe higher. And just from that one deal, having the guts to ask, having the knowledge to act, right? And being at the right place at the right time, we've created I don't want to get fugazi with it, but an infinite money glitch, in a sense, right? Obviously, you got to have good management, obviously. Obviously, you got to have good tenants, right? It's not just magic. Money just doesn't show up. It has to be in a good neighborhood. It's a beautiful home, right? There's definitely other things to it, but I love the idea that you can acquire the knowledge, have the guts to act, find the right person, and just like that, you can change not only his life, but when he passes away, I'll have the house. When I pass away, my son will have the house. So it's that generational stuff that I just love, and I think it's more doable than we think. It's scary. I'm not going to say it's not. I'm a very fearful person, but it's possible. It's possible. and God bless my dad, God bless him, right? But usually how the son acts to the father, the son is more arrogant, right? I can do anything he can do and better, twice as good, right? So if he can do it, I can do it. I don't know if you have that relationship with your father, but I look up to my dad. I'm like, anything he could do, I could do better. So if he can do it, I could do it. And if I can do it, you can do it. It's just a matter of acquiring more knowledge and having more courage.
Having the ability to execute. And when it comes to generational wealth and growing generational wealth, please stick around for next Monday's pod. I actually going to bring on an estate attorney. So Dominic, you're not going to be here on Monday's pod, but we're going to bring on an estate attorney and talk about creating generational wealth. So that's going to be a pretty fun subject. So please stick around for Monday. We're going to bring on another guest there. Is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to creative ways to get into a house in this current market, which is a little crazy right now?
I think the one thing you can't give up on is hope. Just because our grandparents bought their first home at 21 and bought their big home at 28 for, 3 nickels and a raspberry, like we talked about last pod, doesn't mean you should compare yourself to them. Different era, different world. I mean, the internet just barely got invented like 25 years ago. Like, it's a different world, guys. It is possible to own your own home still. And I think a lot of people in my generation, I know some people in your generation, they find it very scary that I might not ever own a home. Well, it's like, well, why do you want to own a home? Right? And you kind of have to peel back the layers. And that's we could do a whole podcast on why you should own a home and why shouldn't you own a home. It's a whole, the American dream and, who created it. That's a whole.
A lot of it's a story. A lot of it's a story you're telling yourself.
Yeah. But it is possible to own a home if that is your goal, if that is your dream. So I just wanted you to keep that in the forefront of your mind. And I think with that being said, we're going to hop over into our next chapter of the podcast. This is where we do viewer mailbag on 5 Friday feedback. I want to say it's my favorite time of the week, but honestly, I really enjoyed what we just did. I really enjoyed that. So let's get right into it. This is from one of our viewers. They have mailed in, not physically mailed in. We don't accept mail, but email and on our website, fiveguys.com. So 40K in debt and making $800 a month before taxes. Not tamales. Jinkies, howdy, Fi Guys. I am 28 years old and I'm making around $400 every 2 weeks. With about $40,000 in credit card debt, I need your help and I need your guidance. Oh, nice gracious. All right, let's lock in, Chris. It's our time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bankruptcy seems like the best option. I briefly signed up for a debt settlement service, but I quickly realized that it wasn't a viable option either. With $500 monthly payment, I have no money left after taxes. I work full-time, actually more than full-time, 46 hours a week selling cars. But unfortunately, the brand I sell cars for gets very little foot traffic. I'm kind of curious on what car would it be. What do you think?
No, what car doesn't get that good at foot traffic right now?
Volkswagen?
No, they get, dude, how many Jettas have you seen recently? There's so many Jettas on the road. Maybe some like weird European car. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
The smart car, maybe? Who makes the smart car? I've never seen
who makes the smart car? That's a we need that in the chat. Drop a comment, please. For every 100 cars, another brand is sold. Only one of our cars is sold.
I don't know what he sells.
I don't know what he's selling. Yeah, what he's selling?
Scooters.
Yeah, electric bikes. Are these those like those Chinese trucks you can buy off like Amazon for like $5,000 maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
Our commissions aren't high enough for me to make up for this lack of volume. I have an interview for a more stable and high-paying job this week and next. So hopefully it will improve my situation. Best of luck on that.
Good luck.
I've always been responsible with the credit score, but at 25, I've always been responsible with credit, and at 25, I had a 770. That's really good. That's really, really solid.
Yeah.
I was ready to buy a home, but my wife didn't want the duplex I was planning on buying and renting out. I didn't proceed with the purchase, which now I consider to be one of my biggest mistakes. How do you feel about that, Chris?
There's a few things I'm thinking of. First, let's go back to him saying that he tried to do a debt settlement service and realized that it wasn't viable. First off, most debt settlement services are bullshit and they just charge you money because you're distressed and they don't really do anything for you. What they tell you to do is defer paying it while they try to negotiate which is them basically saying like, please, please, please don't charge me more. And then at the end of it, when the creditor says like, no, we want the full payment, they just go, oh, well, we tried. You have stuff to pay them, and now you owe additional interest and maybe late fees. So I think that most of those debt repayment plan or debt service settlement things are BS. That's just my standpoint. It's typically better to work with somebody to find like a debt repayment plan rather than trying to pay somebody to settle your debt for you, because most of the time it's a bunch of hullabaloo and you just end up spending money. But I understand if you're desperate, you're looking for hope, but that hope is something not great.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess you want to talk about the spouse not wanting to buy the duplex. Is that the biggest thing you want to talk about?
Yes, please.
You know, when it comes down, when I hear that, like, oh, I could have bought a duplex, but my wife made me not do it. Like, you need to take some personal responsibility, bro. All of life is a negotiation. If your wife didn't want to be in a duplex with you, how did you sell it? How did you tell her it was going to be? Did you tell her like we're going to be inside the same house with this, and like Mike, my buddy's going to be in the room next door? Like, you could sell this to your wife. So it sounds like you were trying to create your own luck and it didn't work out, and now you're blaming your spouse for it. And if you want to play victim, that's totally fine. You can play victim your whole life, but you're not going to get very far. So I'm not calling you a victim. I'm not calling you anything, but like the worst thing you can be in life is a victim. So you had something you wanted to do the duplex. It didn't work out. Was it a mistake? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, because what could have been really bad is had you purchased the house, you have the house, and yeah, you rent out half of it, but you're only making $400 every 2 weeks. And now you can't pay for the house. Now, not only are you kicked out of your house, but also your tenant is kicked out on the street too, because you couldn't make your payments on there. So just because you could have had this house that was bringing in some income, it's not like you're going to rent out half your house and they're going to pay for both mortgages. This is not the way it typically works. So don't be a victim here, bro. Like,
Absolutely.
That's all I'm going to say to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Here's
maybe
the
your
situation.
wife knew something.
No,
maybe your wife knew something. I was going to say, like, maybe your wife knew something. Like, maybe she's like, hey, this isn't a good idea. And she explained that stuff to you. You're like, no. This is going to work out. I don't know what the situation is there, but there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, because you're a team. And part of me is like, you should have just bought it. It's like, no, that's not what a team does. One person on the team doesn't unilaterally make all the decisions, but it is important that, like Chris said, I mean, you got to sell it. Your team, you got to be a united front. If it's not right, then it's not right. But if it is right, you got to do everything you can to make sure that they're on board with it.
Yeah, but if you're in a marriage and you want to do something like an investment and your spouse is not on with it, don't be stupid. Don't do stuff without your spouse. Obviously, you guys have separate accounts. It's your own money. Do your own thing there. But like, if you guys have joint accounts, and if it's something like a house, that is not something that's financial infidelity. It's like doing something like that, where you're straight up doing something against the wishes of your spouse.
So here's the situation I got myself into. About 2 years ago, I had a great job making $70,000 a year with a promising career progression. However, the company pulled the plug just before I could transfer to a permanent spot. At the same time, my wife and I started having major relationship issues. I returned to the community college and got a degree and a career change. Stress from these events led to severe panic attacks.
Okay, pause. So,
Gotcha.
In that case, it's a good thing you didn't purchase that duplex, because had you purchased that duplex with the knowledge that I'm making $70,000 a year, then immediately got canned a few months later, the biggest mistake you would have ever made would have been buying that duplex and then losing that duplex. You already had panic attacks and stress from losing the job. Could you imagine also having to be forced to make payments on the home that you just purchased that you can't afford now?
Exactly. It's true.
It's a story you're telling yourself, bro. You're telling yourself that all this went wrong for no reason. Like, thank God that your wife stepped in.
During this stressful period, I developed severe spending problems. School costs were around $6,000 a year, but I racked up an additional $40,000 a year in credit card debt trying to cope with my stress. Even though my wife and I had enough income to cover the minimum payments, I would end up spending again and again and again, increasing the debt. However, now that we've been in marriage for 9 years, my wife and I are practically separated, no longer sharing finances, or even a home. I'm left making $400 every 2 weeks unless I have a good sales week. and I owe multiple months of payments to multiple creditors. I can't continue like this, and also I can't afford to pay down these balances. It seems like Chapter 7 bankruptcy is my only option, unless a philanthropic billionaire or Mr. Beast steps in to help me. I'm open to any guidance you can offer. Please help. From in a financial bind, peace hard to find, need a way to ease my mind. About that. Well, I'm glad he's getting a new job. Like he's actively hunting for a new job, right? That's a plus. That's a plus.
That's probably the only plus that I heard this entire thing.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you need to find another job. That's a non-negotiable. If you really do work 46 hours a week, if that's true, and I kind of doubt that's true, but let's say you are working 48 hours a week and only making $800 a month gross, that means that you're making $4.01 an hour. If that's the case, go work at freaking Burger King and at least make minimum wage. I don't understand like how long you've been at this dead end job for, but it's a simple calculation. You can keep on working hard to make this thing work, but if it's not working, you can get a job today. Like leave that job. If you're working 46 hours and go work 46 hours at 2 freaking fast food restaurants and at least be making minimum wage. Like, this is not the freaking, I don't know, the pain Olympics. Like you need to figure something out. But I hear a lot of when I'm looking at this, and I'm going to give this guy some tough love, is like, you screwed up. You put yourself in $40,000 of debt. You went to school to better yourself. That's great. I'm sorry about the panic attacks. I have anxiety too. I know what that's like. It's really, really tough. But you and your wife had the ability to work through this. You were making minimum payments, but you put yourself back to the situation by being able to make the payments, but you went and put more debt in. You had to know when you were spending that money that this was going to come back to bite you. But instead of thinking about your future self and thinking like, I want to set future self up for, you said, fuck that guy. I want to take care of me right now. And you allowed your future self to now deal with it. And now you're having to deal with it right now because of the things that past you did. And even right now, with the end of the whole thing, you're saying, oh, if I go to Chapter 7, it'll be good. Or maybe a philanthropic person like Mr. Beast is going to come and pay this off. You're still looking for that hero that's going to come and save you. So my question to you, listeners, do you want to change? Do you actually have a reason to change? Or are you just hoping that someone's going to come and save you? This is your money. This is your life. And if you're sitting there hoping, hope is not a strategy. And I think the worst thing that can happen is that hope does work and someone comes and saves you from this. They pay off your debt or do whatever. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to put yourself right back into the same situation because you haven't learned jack shit from what happened to you, what you did to yourself. And I get mental health struggles are serious. I'm never going to like not say that mental health isn't a real thing. My background is in psychology. So if there's anyone who is kind to that, it is me. But with that being said, there is a dichotomy in that we cannot just sit here and play victim. You need to take control of your life. I'm sorry you and your wife are having marital issues, but I can see from her standpoint where that might be coming from. What do you think, Dominic?
Breaks my heart, man. Breaks my heart. He's in a tough bind. You know, even if his career was great and his relationship is still what it is, you're still in a really tough spot, right? But both of them are on fire right now. I'm worried. I think he needs a mentality change, like we talked about, and he needs to be the hero of his own story. Yep. Stepping up, being the man, and just taking accountability, taking extreme ownership.
And I think that's what it comes down to. And like I try not to be the asshole when it comes to this finance stuff, but unfortunately, week after week after week, we're getting this exact letter every single time. Someone saying like, "Oh, look at all what happened! Like Chris, Dominic saved me from this." And every week it's going to be the same exact thing. Like, I can't save you. I cannot be your hero. I can tell you what to do. I can try to be your guide, but ultimately, you need to figure this out for yourself because you're the one that put yourself into this situation. And would it be compassionate for me to say, "Oh, poor you. That's so sorry that happened. You know, you shouldn't have to deal with it at all." And maybe that's true. Maybe you shouldn't have to deal with it. But unfortunately, you do have to deal with it. I think the most compassionate thing, the most loving thing I can do is be that asshole that's telling you that you need to figure it out rather than looking for the philanthropic Mr. Beast to come and save you. Because might he come and save you? Yeah, maybe. But he only saves like, I don't know, one person a video and he's posting like 52 videos a week. You think you're going to be that one person out of everyone in America. And I bet everyone in America there are so many people in America that have way sadder stories than you do right here. I feel bad for you from the mental health stuff. I feel bad for you from the marriage stuff. I don't feel bad for you for spending a bunch of money to deal with the stress. You knew what that was going to do. You did it anyways.
Yep.
If you had like a mental health issue, like you were bipolar and you went manic and then you like spent yourself into a tither, I feel for that. Like that's a mental health issue. But like just because you're sad or stressed, I'm not going to give you a pass there. When it comes to bankruptcy, I would go back to episode 32 and 32 Five Friday feedback to listen to everything about bankruptcy. Before you declare bankruptcy, I say that that's your last case option. Before you get there, you need to go and find a better job, and you need to start working that job, and you need to create a debt repayment plan to pay that money off as quickly as you can. And if that's the case, we're living off rice and beans. We're not going out partying. We're not going to fancy dinners. Outside of just being able to pay for your rent or your mortgage, eating enough food to sustain yourself and getting yourself to work, all that extra money is going towards that debt. And even with that, it still might not be enough because $40,000 in credit card debt is going to be pretty difficult to get out of. I don't know what your job prospects are, but it sounds like you have at least an associate's degree if you went to a community college. Job market is not amazing right now, despite what economic forecasts are showing. But there are still jobs available to you. And that means you might have to work really freaking hard. You might have to work 3 part-time jobs, 4 part-time jobs to make this work. You might be working 16-hour days and then the rest of your days just going home and sleeping. But if that's the case, the good news is you're not going to be spending a bunch of money because you're going to be working all the time. So all that money can go towards the debt. But you put yourself in the situation, you need to get yourself out of it. Could bankruptcy be the option? Yes, it very well could be. But my biggest concern for you is you declare bankruptcy. Sounds like you don't have very many assets. You get rid of all of it. In 10 years, your credit score goes back to normal, and you put yourself back to the same thing. One of the worst things about credit card debt or about declaring bankruptcy is the moment your bankruptcy clears, every single credit card company is going to start sending you pre-approval offers because they know that you're the kind of person that's going to get yourself back into it. And they're trying to tempt you to do it again. And based off what I'm reading here, based off what Dominic read there, I fear that you'd be that person that puts yourself back into that. And then lament the fact that they forced you to do it. When all they did was they just showed the door was cracked. But you're the one that walked right through it. Over and over and over. Got too harsh, Dominic? Or was
Damn, bro. Damn. Chill out, Chris. No, I was kidding. It was tough love. Tough love. Coddling isn't going to save him. Nobody can save him. Only he can save him. Right? I think it was not easy to hear, but necessary to hear. And we hope here at the Fi Guys that you follow through, you get that better paying job, you fix your relationship with your wife, you get out of debt, you increase that credit score, you find financial freedom. We love that for you. We're excited for that for you, but it's going to take a lot of work. And that's okay. That's all right. I think
that's part of the journey. And then once you get past it, you're going to be able to look back and be like, look where I came from. Yeah. Look what I did. Human beings are meant to walk uphill. We are meant to struggle. We are meant to keep on doing that. If we had every single day we sit on the beach and drink pina coladas, you'd be depressed in like 2 weeks. Yeah. And then you'd be dead. It's, we're meant to struggle. And typically I like to be more kind and compassionate to people, but there's so many parts in this person's letter where they're just saying like, oh, woe is me. It's my wife's fault. It's this fault. I did this. Hopefully someone comes and saves me. I know it was a joke at the end, but like when I read that, it's not. You put that in there for a reason. Yeah. You ended your letter with saying, I hope someone comes and saves me for a reason. It's because you're hoping that someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Peace is worth the hard work. It really is. Especially like this guy has gone through a lot. I can only imagine how great peace will feel when he finally does accomplish what he's looking for. So
you can only experience the highest highs if you've experienced the lowest lows. You have to have that gauge against it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So big hugs from Arizona. I'm sorry that I had to be a little bit more rough with you, but hopefully you take what I said. Yes, I am an asshole. I agree with you, but take what I said, actually like internalize it and go out and make tomorrow a better day than today is. You need to find a better job. We need to start there.
Yeah, absolutely.
After you find that better job, please just stick with what we've talked about on every single podcast.
Best of luck. With that being said, we're going to move on to our third and final chapter of today's podcast, where we like to end off on a little bit more of a happier note rather than a somber note. This is what we like to call Win of the Week. It is quite self-explanatory, but it's where we describe a win that Chris or I had during the week. Pretty complex, I know. I'm going to go first this week. Chris is always going first. And Chris does have a good one, but mine is pretty good too. So my win of the week is that I started waking up early. I mean, very early, too early, but earlier than I have been, to go to the gym. And since I've started this new job, I've really noticed that a version of me that hasn't been around in a long time is returning. You might be thinking, Dom, are you schizophrenic? No, I'm not. Who said that? What? Sorry. That's a terrible joke. I shouldn't have said it. But nonetheless, oftentimes we have seasons in our life where we're going to have to hustle. We're going to have to grind, right? And just like in finance, right? You're going to have those seasons where you're going to work harder. You're going to grind harder, right? I'm in that season right now. I feel that version of me coming back. And every time he does come back, I come back stronger, smarter, right? But I don't want him just to come back for a season. I want him to come back and leave another piece of greatness in me, right? I want him to leave the increased discipline. I want him to leave the increased work ethic, the increased knowledge, everything that you can gain from working hard, waking up early, all that fun stuff. That's what I'm hoping to gain. So I'm unbelievably excited for this coming week to continue waking up early, to continue going to the gym early, and just ultra discipline, ultra focus, and just making more time for myself and having that peace of mind in the morning before everybody wakes up. So yeah, that's my win of the week. What's your win of the week, Chris?
So my win of the week is somewhat exciting. So last win of the week, I told you I got a new modem for my house for internet. I went to set up the modem. It took me like a whole week. We were getting close to the podcast. I'm like, man, I have no win of the week. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't like technology that much. And every time I feel like I set up something, it ends up taking like 3 hours longer than it's supposed to. I plug in the modem, everything's working. And like now I have to call my internet provider and tell them like, hey, here's the modem, here's the IP, here's the MAC, set this bad boy up. So I called them. I was having a nice chat with a lady from my internet service. I tell her, hey, this is the new one I have. And she sets it all up. She goes, okay, cool. You should have internet now. We went on the phone together. I have internet. Perfect. And she goes, is there anything else that we can do for you today? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, while we're here, what plan am I currently on for my internet service? And she goes, oh, well, you're on this plan. And I was like, okay, cool. Is there any better ones? Just to ask the question, are there any better ones that might work based off my usage that you're looking at? And she's like, well, to be honest, sir, we don't even offer this plan that you have anymore because it's a lower gig amount. But we do have this other one that we could upgrade you to that actually is double the speed, double the download and upload speed that you currently have right now. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That sounds good. How much does that cost? She goes, well, actually, that's the good news is that it costs the same amount that you're currently paying. So I was able to double my upload and download speed simply by asking the question of, is there anything that we could do better? And by being a pleasant person, she was able to help me out. So now I have over 500 gig download speed and up over like 50 upload speed simply by asking the question. And my price is exactly the same as it was just by asking the question.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 500 megs up and down. That's pretty good. Pretty solid. That's why I need to upgrade mine. Mine's been a little bit slower lately. I know uploading these podcasts, it takes like an hour and a half, like 2 hours, like for it to go like on Spotify and on YouTube. I'm just like, come on, man. So yeah, I gotta make a phone call as well. But yeah, that's a pretty solid one of the week. Yeah, anything else before we close it out?
No, I got that new modem now, and now like it unlocked like a new thing. So now when I do speed tests, normally it would only show up to like 250. Now it goes up to 1,000. So like you can see the gauge. Like it's awesome. Way cooler.
That's awesome.
But no, that's my win of the week, and excited for that. So guys, if you've stuck around this far, please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment for the algorithm, do all that good stuff. Please put inside the comments like, what'd you think of our win of the week? What's your win of the week? And then, did you enjoy the way that we kind of ran this? Do you enjoy asshole Chris being meaner to the people that write into us? Or do you like me to be a little bit nicer like I typically am? Let us know in the comments. And then Dominic, what's the fee for the show again?
Fee for the show is telling a friend about the podcast because it's always better to go on this financial journey and any journey really with a friend. So make sure to tell a friend, whether that be a family member, a friend, or just post it on social media. We really appreciate it. And with that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Later, guys. Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.